We approach bad games in a different way than we did a few decades ago. I'm not sure if the rise of the internet and an interconnected world has helped us to find more to enjoy about failure as a means of schadenfreude, but there seems to be a lot of us these days, including me, who like watching things fail. I mention this because I'm currently in the process of working out how to feel about Metal Gear Survive. I think many people knew quite early on that a Metal Gear game without, at the very least, the guiding hand of Hideo Kojima was going to struggle for direction and general quality, but I find myself looking at this car accident of a video game with no clue how to feel about it. I enjoyed too much of the other Metal Gear games to relish in this game's failures, but there is a lot wrong with this one. Hopefully over the course of this video, I can work things out. For me, the writing was on the wall with Metal Gear Survive, particularly pertaining to its quality, as early as last August when I went to Gamescom. I remember having plans for that day to go play games like Far Cry 5 and Super Mario Odyssey, but then I noticed the Metal Gear Survive booth and I felt obligated to become better informed on exactly what kind of game they were making here. A short 20-minute demo of the multiplayer later with 3 journalists who didn't really know what they were doing, and I was sad for the rest of the day, actually. I genuinely was. It's one thing hearing speculation and watching trailers, but being there with a controller in my hand and playing such a limp video game, pretending to be part of a franchise which was anything but, it was surprisingly harrowing. Now that I own this game for real, I get the sense that I've made a big mistake giving Konami money for this. Luckily, it seems like the rest of my country had the right idea, so I've always got that to fall back on. Meanwhile, Konami could have really used an event-free launch of the game to fall back on, but that was apparently asking too much. I've never been much of a fan of games that require an internet connection to play the single-player campaign, and not just because my internet isn't the greatest. There's also some bad memories of Sim City from a few years ago not being playable at launch, and it was more of the same with this. The fact that servers were down before Metal Gear Survive came out, making it nigh on impossible for reviewers to get anything done with their advanced copies, kind of set the tone for what was to come. It did, however, remove any lingering thoughts that Konami might know what they're doing, which should have been obvious, but I guess it's nice to have it confirmed like this. Now I can hate this game for clear conscience. And what a game it is! Can you possibly betray expectations when what you're expecting is something horrendously terrible? Why yes you can. Metal Gear Survive looks at the Phantom Pain and says, you know what we need more of? Empty space and zombies, apparently. Oh, and also a need to babysit your character through constantly topping him up with food and water. That was seriously their takeaway from a game that encouraged creativity and a great deal of freedom in how you can complete missions. Some of that would have been nice. I can kind of understand the inspiration behind focusing on survival, since the Phantom Pain had a lot of varied wildlife that you could kill or capture. I remember the agony of 100%ing this game and scouring the vast deserts of Afghanistan for a stupid guinea pig, but I will take an eternity of that caliber of purgatory over having to fight against the short leash that Metal Gear Survive has you on. Your character can barely run for 5 seconds without draining their stamina, which means that everything takes a little longer since you're constantly waiting for the most out-of-shape soldier to get his breath back. Then you'll find yourself having to abandon objectives to top yourself up on food and water before you die. This is an attempt at realism, but I don't think anyone at Konami stopped for long enough to consider if this version of realism was any fun. Because I've played quite a bit of this game and fun was in very short supply. It's a theme that runs throughout Metal Gear Survive and one that acts as the antithesis of everything that the Phantom Pain did so well. Despite Konami inheriting the excellent Fox engine that helped to make the last game so refined and enjoyably realistic, the tools at your disposal here are extremely limited and ill-equipped to give you the freedom that this type of game needs. One of the first things I tried to do with that metal spear you craft at the start was throw it at the zombies as a means of ranged combat. But where the Phantom Pain let you do things that you had never even considered, Metal Gear Survive is considerably more restrictive. And that's a problem because there's a lot of zombies and only really one embarrassingly effective way of killing them. Put up a fence and spam that attack button. Their AI struggles with the concept of going around this fence, and so thrusting your spear at them with reckless abandon really is the most effective strategy. The game does try to encourage you at the start to stealth kill these zombies, but you're only making things difficult for yourself should you try and do this. That might be the game's saddest subplot. For all the features it implements as a means of distancing itself from the franchise it pretends to be from, apart from the name because that shit's worth a lot of money, the dumbing down of the stealth is what gets me the most. Metal Gear spent many years refining and streamlining these features, and to be playing a game that is supposed to be from the same series that reverts back to mechanics that have less attention to detail than the PS1 original is so disheartening. Kojima's been gone for, what, just over 2 years? How did you ruin it so quickly? And yet, because of that, I find myself comparing Metal Gear Survive to another game from the franchise that wasn't spearheaded by Kojima, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Both are clear departures from the franchise's conventions, and both trade out gameplay focused on stealth for varying degrees of action. However, the difference, apart from Rising being a genuinely good game that barely has to rely on the Metal Gear name at all, is that while Platinum Games took over development, Kojima was always lurking in the background to ensure that Rising didn't stray too far from the franchise's roots. Among other things, this is what Survive is missing most of all. The creativity, the passion, the unique touches and ideas that come from having Hideo Kojima involved in some way. Or really anyone who can approach a game with a clear, unique vision instead of being Konami's yes man. I personally would have liked to have seen how Kojima would have approached such a generic setup for a video game. Something tells me that he wouldn't have been satisfied with stabbing zombies through a fence all day. Regardless, you have to see Metal Gear Survive as a spin-off title since so little has been retained from the main games, but all that does is give me two separate means of making comparisons. Does it work as a Metal Gear? No. But if you strip away the name and the very few ties it has to Metal Gear, can it stay afloat as its own thing? Well, the problem is that the zombie survival genre has died down a lot over the last couple of years. Maybe if this game had come out in 2011 or 12, we'd be more excited for it, but in 2018, it is nothing we haven't seen before and a little bit less. For some reason, this game seems to think that no one's ever made a game like this before, which is why you're beaten over the head with tutorials containing such glorious tidbits like eat food to fill the hunger meter, and the situation report informs you of your situation. Whoa, slow down there, video game. This is important stuff. I'll get my notepad. Also, I don't really know where else to put this in the video, but making your environment periodically blurry as your hunger meter reaches critical levels is maybe one of the worst ideas in this game. You know how some people really hate motion blur for making the background look like crap? Yeah, don't do this. The good news is that through making this video, I have now worked out how I feel about Metal Gear Survive, and I can say without a shadow of doubt that this game depresses me, more so than I think any other game out there. I have no complaints if anyone can find enjoyment here, especially because there are some good bits, like the story is okay, if a bit complicated and not really about political drama anymore, and I guess if you really like survival games you might find something to enjoy here, but for me, it's a reminder that the beautifully flawed franchise we had for nearly 30 years is dead. And in its place, it's shambling, reanimated, zombified remains masquerading as something it clearly isn't. I didn't even have time to mention the microtransactions that Konami have laced throughout this game, so that a new save file costs real-world money to purchase. But it's horrendously evident that they've turned Metal Gear into a soulless cash cow. My hope is that Metal Gear Survive is as big a commercial failure as is humanly possible, because it's obvious that there's no desire here to take the franchise forward or to do anything with it other than squeeze it dry. My logic is that if this game fails, they might just lay the franchise to rest and allow it to die. Metal Gear surviving is the worst case scenario.